So welcome everyone to your first WeSpace meeting at ICN, where we share a vision that gathering a global community of mystical practitioners will contribute to the loving evolution of Christianity and the world.
Tony, thank you. I love it that our vision is large, the loving evolution of Christianity in the world. But at the same time, here we are on the ground, practicing group meditation and mystical presence.
So you're entering into this community of ICN where we carry this vision. And since this is your introduction to ICN and WeSpace, we'd like to interview Paul Smith and Luke Keeley, who are its founders.
Paul, you are a pastor at Broadway Baptist Church in Kansas City for 40 some years. Was it sometime during that period that you thought of ICN? How did the idea get started?
Great question. And thank you, Gene and Tony. You all are just treasures of ICN, and thank you for this, initiating this time. Well, for me, ICN began when I was 12 years old. When I asked my Sunday school teacher, how come all this stuff we read about here in the Bible and study never happens in our church? Of course, by stuff, I didn't have a word for it, but by stuff, I meant the mystical stuff, the visions and the guides, the angels, the healings, and all that mystical stuff. And he said, well, I don't know, go ask the pastor. So I went and asked him, and he said, well, I don't know either. I thought maybe they'd answer that in seminary, but it didn't seem to help. And so I remember going to seminary hoping that would help, and I didn't get any answers from that. So when I finished seminary, I was called to my church, my one church, for 49 years. And I lunged at anything that looked mystical. And so that's what I pursued as we kept the church going and didn't try to appear too weird. And one of the things that was most helpful was when we were a part of a third wave of the charismatic movement. That was the most mystical thing I'd seen. And I was a part of that. But the problem was it didn't teach me how to appropriate the mystical in a wider sense. And so it really wasn't until I retired. Actually, before that, 20 years ago, I became familiar with Ken Wilber and his writing and met him, and wrote 2 books translating integral into Christian thought. And I was so impressed with Ken and his Buddhist meditation practice. It made my 5 minutes of prayer every morning seem pretty puny. So I decided to go after some kind of meditative prayer, and tried that, and it helped some. But when I retired, then I met Luke 6 years ago. I was working then on what would be the meditation practice that would help us embrace this mystical. And I researched all the practices and so on, and came up with what we call the whole body mystical awakening and the 4 centers of spiritual knowing, and began practicing that. And that put me in touch with the mystical. I began having visions and a deeper understanding of Jesus and spirituality. Teaching that, Luke and I teaching that to ICN members, I got to practice it with these wonderful people like you all. And when we did it together, it just was 10 times more powerful for me. And it was like, wow. And so it really took off. And in terms of the city head centers and heart centers and gut centers and feet centers, a couple of months ago, I had this shift in my own self and realized that finally my 4 centers seem to be permanently open. They're open all the time.
Mm.
And so I live with that. And it's just incredible. I call it the hum of aliveness that I experience all the time. Practicing our practice. And of course, I've done it now for 5 or 6 years, and with you all so often. And so I fully recommend what we're doing. And that's how it started and where it is with me right now.
Wow.
How
the
about you?
hum
How
of
about you,
aliveness.
Luke?
Wow. Luke.
Yeah, well, goodness, yeah, ICN, where did it start for me? I mean, yeah, early on as well, it was a longing for more than what I experienced so often
Yeah.
in church and in spirituality, and right, again, not having the language in the same way for what it was that I was seeking and what I was looking for. I remember looking for it in books and reading and searching through all the mystics and different writings, and thinking, oh, I need to find like the secret key that will unlock the secret of something. I don't know, the secret of life or whatever. And I kept searching, but felt more and more drawn to what I guess I call the divine immediacy, or the presence of God in our lives in ways that are right there, that aren't separated and divided by whatever it might be that we often put in place of you have to do this to find this, right? Read these things or do this thing for 20 years, or go to the priest or take this bread and wine, or whatever it might be. That to me was always this sense of no, I think it's right here. I think it's present. But it doesn't always feel that way. It didn't always feel that way for me. And I would always look for my church or my spirituality to answer that, to open up to the path of awakening consciousness, I guess, really, to becoming more aware and present with that in a more full sense. And that pursuit led down a number of different pathways that eventually came into this form of ICN, and of course meeting Paul in that experiential connection that we shared, and really how that collective, that relational, that personal shared mysticism opened and unlocked so many things for both myself and I know for Paul as well. And then right, really tapping into that collective power, and how can we gather others and share in that? Because I knew there were many more as well who were looking for that, who maybe felt individual, isolated, separated from others who really wanted to walk the same mystical path. And now we have this, amazing tools like the internet and Zoom and right capacities that we didn't even have 5 or 10 years ago. So the possibilities really opened up in form, and the synchronicity, providence of Paul and I coming together to flow a spirit in that movement, 4 or 5 years ago.
And that was really important to me too. I told Luke the other day, I said, my relationship with you has changed my relationship with Jesus. When I met Luke and we sat in Panera's and had lunch together, it felt like I'd met my soulmate, and we just made this connection, and it was just so wonderful for me. I never had that with anybody, and our connection spiritually and just as friends was just so transforming. And that was also affecting my prayer and meditation. I had a partner in that. And I remember one day I said to Jesus, Jesus, I'd like to have the kind of relationship with you I have with Luke. And Jesus said, well, let's go. And so it was transferring. but I learned it on Luke
Hmm.
to have at least one other person. And then we experienced that in our WeSpace group, which has been going for 5 years, the one we have here. So that connection with Luke was just forever thankful for that and Luke.
So it started in person and you launched a group there in the Kansas City area. When did you get the notion that there should be an ICN, an organization, and to take it out onto the internet with Zoom?
Yeah, well, I always kind of had that sense, that this was a global calling, that the vision for this could not be bound by geography. And I think that ties into a couple of reasons. One is because, mystics can be a bit of a rare breed, and we can be scattered, right? And there is kind of that, I don't know, stereotype of mystics as hermitic, or right, private with their experiences, or going to the caves, right, or maybe in the monasteries. That's another one. But it just, yeah, I mean, I searched in a lot of ways to find others who resonated with a way of community and mystical practice, and it was always so hard to find. And I grew up in Kansas City. That's where Paul's church was, and was here for so long. I didn't know about that when I was younger, but that's okay. I wasn't ready for it. Wasn't ready to meet him until much later, when I'd gone through some personal development, spiritual development. But we formed that group to kind of try things out and experiment and learn together. And we had an event here in Kansas City where we shared the vision for ICN, but always knew that there were going to be people from all over the world who would want to be a part of this and would be really drawn to connect in this way. And the tools were there. So that's my gathering instinct and impulse to say, okay, right, let's widen the net. Let's put it out there for anyone who might be able to find us. And a number of people had emailed Paul throughout the years in response to his books from all over and said, are there any churches like this? Or, where can I practice this? And I don't know, Paul, how did you answer those? You didn't have too much to offer them, right? So
Exactly. I said, well, good luck. and for me, at the church, I never thought in terms of, I was pleased that our Southern Baptist congregation moved to a more integral place slowly, gradually, over 49 years. That's Southern Baptist time. And but I never once thought, this is the way all churches ought to be. We ought to spread this around the world. But when Luke and I got together and we formed our group, and then a few others, I sent the emails out to the people responding to my book. It seemed like with Luke, apparent, this is something I'd love to see spread around the world. This is worth spreading. This is transforming. And so it truly has been. We hear testimonies all the time of how transforming of what we're doing is. It's certainly transformed Luke and myself. So it's good. It started with us, and we're still transforming. But it's moving on to other people. So I'm very excited about the potential of our movement joining with other movements that are like, similar in other traditions, and also the Christian tradition. And together, we're going to transform the world.
I love it. We keep saying ICN. I know it means Integral Christian Network. So can you talk just a little bit about what integral and Christian means? And then, I'm sure Luke will talk a little bit more about network.
Well, I can remember the two times when Luke and I said, what should we call this thing? And we debated, and Luke's so good with words. I always say, think of a word for this, or think of a word for that. And he kind of came up with Integral Christian Network, and it is borne out that it really describes us. One, we're integral. We believe in integrating all the best things from the past, all the best things from other traditions, all the best things from Christianity, and all the best things we're learning now, putting them together. And Ken Wilber, the father of integral theory, has a full description of that. And so I took what he said and translated into Christianity. So in a sense, it refers to that kind of integral, but we've added some things to it. And a Christian, we're Christians. We treasure and love the Buddhists and the Hindus and the Sufis and all the other traditions, and learn from them. But we follow Jesus. And we even debated, should we use the word Christian? Because it's like the word church. It's got some baggage. And sometimes I just call it the Jesus path or following Jesus. But that's what we mean by Christian. It's the stuff Jesus did and said, and his presence with us now. And so that seemed good. And then Luke came up with the word network. I thought, oh yes, that describes it.
Yeah.
It's this worldwide network that we have via Zoom, the new way of doing church, the spiritual internet. And so that was that we got that and we stuck with it. And I said to Luke the other day, we named it right, and it seems to fit. Yeah.
Well, and Paul's being modest. It wasn't too much of a stretch to go from his book Integral Christianity that he wrote the first and primary vision of that, and then network really is such a huge part of who we are and how we are, because we believe that this spiritual evolution and development will come through our interconnection, through our interbeing, and really engaging in that in ways that really are unprecedented. I mean, with the ways that we can connect with each other across the globe and share information. I'll use that word very broadly in the sense of mystical knowledge and connection and energy and spirit is really amazing. I mean, early on, people were very surprised. I guess people are still surprised often of how much can be transmitted and conveyed and felt and experienced through Zoom, through the internet, through seeing pictures. It's like we're thousands of miles apart from one another, but the energetic presence and love and connection among us is right there. I mean, it's so palpable. And so it really is a network of those energies and lines connecting and converging and coming together in so many ways that not only feed our own spirituality, but also have the potential for creativity, right? We come together in these connections, and that leads to collaborations, that leads to further evolution happening in an expedited way, because we're able to engage with others in ways that we never would have been able before. So it really is a living network. It's an mystical ecological network, right? Where the life is coming together in synergy and symbiosis. And I'm getting into my poetic words, right? But that's the sense of it, that this is how life will evolve and thrive. And we experience that personally in our own spirituality, and seeing that, the vision is to see that come forth more and more for the loving evolution of Christianity in the world.
I really feel that in my WeSpace groups. We arrange a time so this person from Australia can meet with us, or this person from the UK, and we are a network stretched out over the globe, and that makes it feel more vibrant, more real. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we welcome everyone, and we're so glad that you've joined a WeSpace. And very soon you'll be invited to other events and activities that ICN does, and you'll learn more about those in the upcoming week. So once again, welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome.